Good afternoon, Awesemo FanDuel baseball fans. How you doing out there? Terry McBride here, bringing you the tournament strategy show. I'm brought to you by PrizePicks this afternoon, one of our excellent partners that you've probably heard us talk about on a lot of different shows. We're all really excited to see everybody out there doing so well on PrizePicks. I happen to live in a place where I can't play on the site, unfortunately, so I am just envious of everybody who takes our free projections and goes over to PrizePicks and just starts winning money. If you're not familiar with the site, it's prop-based play, so they give you a long list of available player props. You can cross over from NBA to NHL to MLB, put together multi-sport cards. You're looking to pick five right in terms of the player props. But the beautiful part about it is it's not like putting together a parlay with player props on a betting site. If you lose one of your legs of your parlay, you can still win money. 4 out of 5 still pays on PrizePicks. Pretty slick. If you hit all 5 of the bets on your card, you win 10x your money. It is a very solid site. I encourage everybody to go check it out. PrizePicks is a lot of fun, and I can't wait to start playing on there. But for now, while I'm not there, go win some money over on PrizePicks. We're here to talk about some tournament plays for the FanDuel slate today. Off the top, we're going to go through 3 pitchers and 3 stacks. And off the top, my favorite pitcher for FanDuel today, the most interesting guy on the board to me, is Pablo Lopez. Pablo Lopez is going to be going up against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Lopez is a premium pitcher. He has had a very strong strikeout rate throughout his career. The main thing that Pablo Lopez tends to deal with is not being on the mound. But when he is, he's very strong. Over the course of last season, Lopez was at 27.5% strikeout rate over 102 innings. This season so far, he's out to a 27.1% strikeout rate. He's cut his walk rate from 6.2% to 4.7%. Most interestingly about Pablo Lopez, it's a little bit of happenstance, but he's only given up 1 run so far in 4 starts. That is amazing. He's got a 0.39 ERA. Now, he does have a 2.22 expected ERA and a 2.59 xFIP. So the expectation is that his numbers will be a little bit higher, but both of those marks are still stellar. And he's going up against an Arizona team that we just do not think very much of overall. So far this season, Arizona's active roster has been okay for ISO. They have a 164 ISO. That's not a very aggressively good ISO, but by comparison to some of the ridiculously low marks that we're getting for teams across baseball this year, it actually ranks 7th overall. But what you can attack about the Diamondbacks is their 26.2% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching that ranks 29th out of 30 teams in baseball. They also create runs 13% worse than average, ranks them 22nd in baseball. Pablo Lopez is going to be very safe against this team, and he has an excellent opportunity to rack up strikeouts. Taking a look at our top starters board for the FanDuel slate, Lopez ranks 2nd. He's got a 13.2% probability of being the top pitcher, and he's owned 16.6% of the time. So technically he is at a bit of negative leverage, but you're getting him at a lot cleaner leverage number when compared to a pitcher like Chris Bassett, who tops the board for probability at 14.4%, but is going to be owned at nearly 30% of the field. And Bassett is in a much more difficult matchup. If you watch the DraftKings video, we really like Bassett today. He tops the board for probability on both sites. He should have a good opportunity of finding strikeouts against Atlanta, but there's a tremendous amount of power and a lot of offense, a lot of run creation in that Atlanta lineup, where Lopez is going up against a team that is inept at creating runs. So Pablo Lopez has an excellent chance of being the top starter, and for roughly half the ownership that Bassett is getting, even at technically negative leverage, I'm happy to make Pablo Lopez my number 1 starter on the FanDuel slate today. I think it makes a lot of sense to go to him and to get over that field, the 16% mark for the field. If you're pushing 25% Pablo Lopez today against this Diamondbacks lineup, I think you're doing pretty well there. The next pitcher on my list for FanDuel is Chris Paddack. Paddack is an uncomfortable roster for a lot of people out there, particularly when we're talking about him on a 1-pitcher site. But I think based on some noticeable changes that he's made so far this season, at 7,800 on the FanDuel slate and with positive leverage, we're getting an interesting opportunity from Chris Paddack today. Paddack sits 4th overall on the board. He's got a 9.6% probability of being the top starter, and he's positively leveraged. Only 7.3% of the field is looking to include him in lineups. Most people are going to the top 4 by price. That's Bassett, that's Pablo Lopez, that's Zach Gallen, and that's Max Fried. Chris Paddack is sneaking in at a nice value price that can buy you a big bet for the differential between him and a Gallen, him and a Fried, and he does it with not a lot of the field on him. So I really like the spot for Chris Paddack here. Paddack is going up against a Baltimore lineup that has been very low end this year so far. They have a 109 ISO that ranks 25th for power. They have a 24% strikeout rate in this split, ranks them 23rd. They've created runs 13% worse than average. They have a 1.55% home run rate against righties so far this season. There's a lot to like about the opportunity for Paddock. What we need Chris Paddock to do in this start is to come out and continue throwing the curveball that he's picked up so far this year in Minnesota. He, for the longest time, since his breakout in 2019, Chris Paddock's, the knock on Paddock was that he only had two pitches. He had a premium fastball and a plus changeup. This year, he started throwing his curveball again, and the Twins have taught him to throw it effectively. So Paddock has now 3 effective pitches, and he's working on a 4th. He could become a very dangerous starter. Do we think that he jumps back up to the 26.9% strikeout rate he posted in 2019 as a rookie? Maybe not. But the 24% strikeout rate that he posted in 2020 in the short season is definitely approachable. And one thing to always like about Paddock that he's always been consistent with, even through the struggles, is he's been below a 5% walk rate through his career. So this is a kid who does not yield free passes, does not give other opposing teams extra opportunities. He has a strong chance of pitching through this one cleanly and putting up a nice score with nobody on him on FanDuel. So I like the opportunity for Chris Paddock. The third pitcher on the board here for FanDuel is another one who is drawing not that much ownership for the potential in the matchup that he's got, and that's Drew Rasmussen from Tampa Bay. Rasmussen's going up against an Oakland lineup that nobody thinks very much of and has probably somewhat overperformed this year. And when I say they've probably overperformed, we're talking about a team with a 121 ISO against right-handed pitching, a 24.1% strikeout rate, and one that has created runs 10% worse than average so far for the season. This is not a good baseball team. Drew Rasmussen is an effective starter. Rasmussen so far this season has a 24.3% strikeout rate, just a 5.4% walk rate. He had a 23.8% strikeout rate over the course of last season. So he knows how to sit guys down, and this is a team that will give him every opportunity to find some additional strikeouts. So far this season, Rasmussen's out to a 3.50 ERA and a 3.16 xFIP, 4.11 expected ERA is about a half a run and change higher. He's only thrown 18 innings in his 4 starts, but he's getting stretched out. We can expect upwards of 90 pitches or thereabouts from him today. So based on the matchup, based on the talent, I really like Drew Rasmussen for 8,200 and less than 10% ownership. I think he could be another sneaky tournament play if you're not paying up to the premium pitchers on the FanDuel slate, and he helps you buy additional bats. So he's another potentially sneaky option for FanDuel play. That'll lead us into talking about some of the stacks on the board. One of the top stacks on my list, one of the top stacks on the site's list, is unfortunately a team that's taking on my favorite team in baseball, the New York Yankees. That's the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are going to be going up against the lefty and Jordan Montgomery. Montgomery, as everybody knows, more effective in terms of real-life baseball than he is in terms of fantasy. But anytime you can get this Toronto team lined up against the lefty, where they are very, very effective at limiting strikeouts. So far this season, 21.6% strikeout rate is 10th best in baseball. They're effective at creating runs. They're effective at hitting home runs, and they have a lot of right-handed power. I really like the opportunity to get to some Blue Jays bats here. They're owned at the top end. George Springer, Bo Bichette, and Vlad Guerrero are all owned in the mid-teens. But once you hit the 4 spot in the projected lineup with Lourdes Gurriel into Matt Chapman, into Alejandro Kirk, and some of these other hitters, the ownership drops off the table. So it is very easy to put together a Blue Jays stack that includes some of the premium bats while using some of those less expensive, less popular bats in the middle to offset some of the popularity. You can do that. You can roster the heavily owned guys and put this team together with any number of lower owned value options. You can roster the most expensive and the most highly owned bats and put them together with a pitcher like Chris Paddock, who is both cheap and under owned on this slate. There are a lot of ways to put together the Blue Jays bats on this one that really make them interesting. Taking a look at the top stacks board for FanDuel, the Blue Jays rank somewhere near the middle. They're pulling in a 9% probability of being the top stack. But what I really like about them is you're getting them at positive leverage, a 1.10 leverage score. Going down the list, they rank 5th, and they're the first team that we get to at positive leverage. The overall ownership share, only 7.9 projected overall ownership share. Everybody else above them is in the mid-teens to the top of the board, which is the Houston Astros at 20%. As a leverage play, as a potentially sneaky option, it pays to go to one of the best lineups in baseball when you can do it for being able to string them together cheap and low owned. So getting to Blue Jays off the top makes a lot of sense. I really like the Yankees stack on the other side of this one, but nobody needs to hear me talk about how great the Yankees are. We'll move on to the next stack on the list. That's the Seattle Mariners. who I think can be a little bit frisky. They're going up against Jake Odorizzi, who I do not think much of as a pitcher at this point in his career. Odorizzi, very low strikeout rate guy, and you're talking about some very interesting bats on the Mariners side. They're pulling in a little bit of ownership, but it's primarily around Jesse Winker. We've got a very high individual ownership projection on Jesse Winker because he's priced down to 2,600 going up against a weak right-handed pitcher. That just doesn't make sense. So Winker's pulling a tremendous amount of one-off ownership that's impacting what the leverage score on this team looks like. Seattle ranks third. They have a 12.5% probability of being a top stack for us, and they're technically a negative 0.7 leverage score. That's efficient ownership. That's not ownership that we worry about. But outside of Winker, outside of the 20% on Eugenio Suarez hitting fourth in this projected lineup, we're only dealing with 12%, 11% ownership or below for most of these hitters. So there are very good bets at cheap prices and at low ownership. And you can look toward the back end of this lineup with a young player like Julio Rodriguez, who hit his first home run of his career over the weekend. Jared Kelenic, for all his struggles last year, very cheap, still a lot of talent in that bat. You can put together back end of the lineups. You can put together lineups that wrap around from those guys to the top end of the lineup, or just go through the middle of this Mariners lineup. In this matchup, I think they have an excellent opportunity of delivering some runs. They were the other team that I used in my placeholder lineup today. I'm really enthusiastic about the Mariners' opportunity for price and for popularity. The last team on the board here is one of the contrarian spots on the list that we can get to today. And I'm talking about the Atlanta Braves. They're going up against Chris Paddock, who I mentioned, Chris Bassett, who I mentioned at the too many Chris's on this slate, who I mentioned at the top of the show. Bassett leads our probability board on the pitchers for both sites today. He is an excellent option for pitching. I will have plenty of shares of Chris Bassett on both sites, but I think the Braves are getting overlooked because of that matchup. This is a team that is one of the best in baseball for power against right-handed pitching so far this season. Atlanta has a ISO that ranks second overall in baseball against right-handed pitching with 195. They have a home run rate that ranks second overall in baseball at 3.94%, and they've created runs 15% better than average. The thing that's pulling some strong projections from Bassett are his talent, of course, and the 24.4% rate at which these guys strike out against right-handed pitching. But with all that power and with everybody in this lineup pulling in low single-digit ownership, I want to be a part of the Atlanta Braves stack today. So I'm going to have a lot of both sides of this one, but I think hitters like Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Marcell Ozuna, Ozzie Albies, all five of those guys are very interesting. They're all arguably underpriced on the FanDuel slate. They should be drawing a lot more ownership on FanDuel. You can get different in the back of the lineup with all the power in it. Adam Duvall. You can get different by rostering Dansby Swanson at shortstop. He's an excellent underrated shortstop option who is very unpopular and very underpriced. Even Travis Demeritte, a former first-round pick who is in this lineup now. Travis Demeritte had 4 seasons, over 20 home runs in the minor leagues, also can throw in 10 to 12 stolen bases. Don't sleep on Travis Demeritte. He's 2,500. He slots in at second base on the FanDuel slate. He is an interesting bat from the end of this lineup if he's in the lineup. So top to bottom, the Atlanta Braves as a contrarian stack, I think are very interesting for FanDuel tournaments. Guys, that brings us to the end of the FanDuel show. We were brought to you by PrizePicks. I really encourage everybody to go check them out. Good luck in your FanDuel tournaments tonight. I expect to see somebody out there at the top of the tournament.